now that we see the word Beirach, bless, which is the root of the word bracha, is all letters of Twoness, right? Remember, Beit, too, is the letter of connection relationship, right? That's why Beit was the preposition when it's a prefix in front of a noun, and you say be something, you're saying in it or with it, right? By it is in or with, in the house, right? Good. So now we see it's all Twoness. It's 222 because it's the letter of Twoness, the letter of 200ness, and the letter of 20ness, right? Those are all factors of two, connection or relationship. Let's see what happens when we scramble the letters, because God's not going to make spelling mistakes. So if every letter of Twoness, whether it's 220 or 200, is a letter of flow, connection, expression out into the world, right? So if you scramble the words, they still have to make sense. So let's take some other famous words. There's the word rechev. There's the word bachor. There's the word kruv. Okay, these have got to have something to do with flow, connection, expression out in the world, because they're all Twoness. So let's figure out how. What is a rechev? Yeah, it's a vehicle in modern Hebrew, but that's not, it's not in the Torah. In the Torah, a rechev is a chariot. So why would God spell the name for a chariot with all letters of flow, connection, expression out to the world? So if you were from the planet Venus, and you parachuted down to Earth 3,000 years ago, and we're standing in the desert, side by side, and I say, welcome to the planet Earth, and you say, thank you, it's a pleasure to be here. And I point at a distant hill, and on that hill is this chariot bouncing along, pulled by 6 beautiful horses. And the horses are thundering over the hill, kicking up sand and dirt, making a rumbling noise, and the chariot's bouncing along in the back. And I say to you, you have any of those on your planet? And you go, no, I've never seen one of those before. What is that? And I say, well, it's called a chariot. So then I ask you, just for fun, what is in charge of that chariot? And you say, well, that's easy. Obviously, what's in charge of the chariot? The 6 big, powerful, whatever those things are in the front. I'd say, yeah, they're horses. But that's not what's in charge of the chariot. That's what everybody thinks, and I'd laugh condescendingly. And I'd pass you a pair of binoculars, which hadn't been invented yet. I'd say, take a closer look. And you'd zoom in. And funny enough, bouncing around in the back of this chariot is a skinny little guy with 2 leather straps. And every time he does this, the whole thing goes that way. And every time he does this, the whole thing goes that way. And I'd say, yeah, that's the lesson of a chariot. A chariot in Torah metaphor always represents, it's not the big, powerful system that you think is in charge. There's somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings. Because the Torah is not a book of transportation. We don't care about chariots. We don't care about all these types of, how people got from one place to another. What's that doing in the Torah? Like when Abraham goes to sacrifice Isaac, it says he rode on a donkey. We're saying, who cares if he rode on a donkey? Did he kill his son or not? So the Torah says, no, you care. You care how he got there, because donkey is a chomor, represents chomer, physicality. Riding on a donkey represents your ability to control, direct your physical drives. The donkey's not riding on you, so to speak. It's a very high level, so God's hinting that this test could be passable. So anyway, so if the Torah's not a book of transportation, what do we care about chariots? Chariots represent somebody behind the scenes pulling the strings, and everyone else thinks it's the big, powerful system. The horses are in charge. Wrong. What are famous examples of that? Well, when Joseph was sold into slavery down in Egypt by his brothers, and he ends up being thrown in jail, and then he interprets Pharaoh's dream about the cows coming out of the Nile. And Pharaoh says, wow, if this God of yours says that there's going to be 7 years of plenty followed by 7 years of famine, and you're the only one who knows what this God is doing, I'm going to make you in charge of agriculture for Egypt. So now Pharaoh has a problem. He just took the lowest of the low in Egypt. Joseph is Jewish. He's a Hebrew slave, right? That makes him low. He's a slave. And then he's a prisoner. I mean, somewhere, in ancient Egypt, that was the level of a rat. So how do you get people to take him seriously? So, in the next verse, or 2 verses later, what does Pharaoh do? He puts him in a chariot and parades him through the city. Meaning, the message is he's going to be pulling strings around here. You're going to have to listen to him. And that's why at the splitting of the sea, when we praise God for saving the Jewish people, we throw in a verse that doesn't make sense. We say, and Pharaoh's chariot sank. And you're thinking, whoop-de-doo, who cares if his chariot sank? Did his shoes get wet? The answer is no. The Torah put that information because for the last couple of centuries, we thought Pharaoh was in charge. He's pulling the strings, right? He's running the system called ancient Egypt. God says, forget his system. It's at the bottom of the ocean. I pull the strings. And that's why we had a vision of Hashem's chariot at the splitting of the sea. Okay? So chariots always represent flow, connection, expression of your influence, your power out into the world. And that could be why God's using letters of flow, connection, expression out in the world, all letters of Twoness. Let's take another example. Let's take a Bechor. A Bechor is your firstborn. So now, why is God using letters of flow, connection, expression out in the world? What's different? In English, we don't have a name for a firstborn. We use first and born. But in Hebrew, we actually have a special name for your firstborn. What's different between your firstborn and all the other kids you have? The difference between your firstborn and your other children is your firstborn made you a parent. The other children didn't. Right? So since the firstborn made you a parent, that firstborn gave you a flow and expression of who you and your husband are out into your future. Until you have that firstborn child, you and your husband have each other. But there's no flow, expression of who you are into your future. Your firstborn does that for you, and your other children don't. So your firstborn gets letters of Twoness, flow, connection, expression out into the world. Because that's where you and your husband's flow is coming from. You follow? Make sense? You with me? Yeah. Okay, good. How about the Kruv? So there were two of them. A Kruv is a name for a golden angel that stood on top of the ark that was in the Holy of Holies in the Mishkan in the desert or in the temple in Jerusalem. And normally you are not allowed to make a statue of an angel. That's idolatrous. The only exception is if God tells you to. So in the Torah, God told us to make two gold angels sitting on top of the lid of the ark. So they're called kruvim. So why would God use letters of flow, connection, expression out of the world for these two gold angels which were on top of the lid?
Were these the ones facing each other and like moving away from each other?
Correct. So the Talmud says that they were barometers that tracked the flow, the connection, the expression of the relation between God and the Jewish people. One of them metaphorically represents God. One of them metaphorically represents the Jewish people. So when the flow, the connection, the expression of the relationship between God and the Jewish people was connective, right? That's the Twoness we're looking for. They face each other. God did a miracle when the flow, the connection, the expression of the relation between God and the Jewish people became disconnective. So then God pivoted their faces away from each other. So since they tracked the flow, the connection, the expression of the relation between God and the Jewish people, God uses letters of Twoness, flow, connection, expression out into the world. Do you follow? Okay, good. So that's a little bit of background into letters of Twoness.